So who was here last week? Quick show of hands. Great. All right. Looks like I need to do a reminder. All right. Last week we started a series called One More. And we're basically, what I was wanting to do at the beginning of this year is to kind of, I use the phrase, whet your appetite a little bit last week around this idea that evangelism matters. Evangelism matters. This isn't a capital E evangelist where it's something reserved for those people, those who we naturally see as evangelical, those people who just have the insane ability to connect with people and just share the gospel like it's on their sleeve. Evangelism is actually the responsibility of all of us. That is evangelism, which means to be a good news bearer. Right? That's the euangelion, to be a bearer or a messenger of good. All right, and so we all have a responsibility to do this. It isn't just some small segment, and I wanted to kind of provide some real kind of practical tips as to how each of us could learn to embrace that. I mentioned last week that evangelism, at least how I was grown up to understand it, was not something that I naturally kind of identified with. And so it was very easy to kind of say, oh, well, that's for somebody else. And yet, certainly in more and more recent years, I was reminded, and particularly as I continue to kind of read through the scriptures, the Great Commission was not just to a few, the Great Commission was to us all. And the challenge for each of us is to discover what it looks like for us to be evangelical, right? That's the challenge. What does it look like for you in your context with your realm of people who perhaps you are the only person that person might ever know who knows Jesus? Who knows? What does it look like for you to use that responsibility and that opportunity well? And so last week we looked at the call of Mark and particularly how the first thing he did was he went and told his brother Peter, who would become the Peter. On his rock I will build my church. And this idea that rapid communication of the good news is something that we can all get better at. It's like if I hear good news, whether it be about Jesus or something from the Bible that kind of jumps out, some sort of truth that is transformative, that is profound, or perhaps we don't even think it's profound, doesn't even matter. We have a responsibility, and something that we can do is to rapidly share that truth. Just as Mark did, you may not see yourself as a Peter figure, but perhaps you're a Mark figure. Maybe you're one of those people who, through communicating simple truth, will lead other people to Jesus or to his kingdom impact. And tonight we're going to look at exactly the passage that follows directly after the Mark and Peter passage in John chapter 1. And this is the combination, the one more so to speak, of Philip and Nathanael. Okay, and you'll see here that again you will see this rapid communication of truth. All right, so this wasn't something that was just happening between Mark and Peter. This is something that these disciples, or in this case Philip, also embraced. And yet there is actually this story is it's really simple. It's really bizarre as well. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do as I was kind of digging this up, because there is an incredible truth here, again, that is accessible for us to embrace as we try to become better evangelists in our own life. And I want to start with this idea. Now, I don't know whether this is a new thing or how long it's been around for, but I remember as I was going through doing my tests in high school and university and all those kind of things, one of the things you were really, really kind of loving, if it was possible, was the old cheat sheet. Okay, now when I say cheat sheet, I don't mean the one that you secretly sneak in that you're not supposed to have. I'm talking about the one that they give you permission to have prior to the exam. You know, they won't tell you what questions will be on the exam, except what they'll do is they'll give you a little sniff. They'll give you a little piece of hope in the form of one A4 page that you can try to put as much information on as possible. And I remember with these cheat sheets, people would have different tactics. Some people would try to fit as much information onto them as possible. So this is before they let you actually print onto sheets. They would use every single line would have 3 lines worth of content on it, and you'd see people kind of fill every single square section of this sheet. So it basically came in, it was blue, right, full of pen. You know, there was hardly any white to be seen, and yet it had kind of all this information. Because what was the goal, right? The goal was that you open that exam and you look at the question, and you're like, whoa, that answer is right there. It's almost like I knew what was going to be on the exam. That's the goal, right? Is to kind of open the exam and go, I have the perfect truth, the perfect set of answers for this particular question. And of course, it didn't always turn out that way, did it? Sometimes we wrote a whole bunch of stuff about a book that we suddenly realized wasn't actually on the exam. Or maybe we wrote down the wrong formulas and we realized that this was actually a different math exam or whatever it is. Sometimes it didn't line up. But the goal, the hope was that you would get this perfect connection between what you hopefully anticipated was something that you would need and what was actually required. Well, you know what? In this story that we're about to read from John, chapter 1, we see this connection between what was needed and what was provided in a way that should inspire us to be more bold when it comes to sharing our faith. Let's go through the text and you'll discover this very quickly. So John chapter 1, if you've got your Bibles, you're welcome to turn to them. If you want your phones, navigate there. If you're online, open a new tab. But we're going to work our way through this. The reason why it's great, by the way, to bring your Bible, maybe you use a different translation, it will just kind of jump out to you. Maybe it'll give you a different angle. Never be afraid to bring your Bibles. It looks awesome when you're out there and you got your Bibles. Thank you, front row. All right, so next day. Let's read this. Verse 43. The next day. Okay, so this is the day after the whole Mark and Peter thing, right? Okay, so this is literally the next day. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him. So, see, straight away, by the way, okay, almost a perfect reflection of the previous passage. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nazareth, can anything good come from there? Said Nathanael. "Come and see," said Philip. All right, so let's just unpack this a little bit first. Okay, so we've got Jesus. He's kind of recruiting his disciples. He sees Philip. He says, "Hey, come follow me." And he's like, "Sweet." And then Philip goes and he finds Nathanael. Now, I don't really know what their relationship was, but nevertheless, he was obviously someone who was, as we described last week, maybe a person of peace. Someone who was clearly open to the fact that there was a Messiah coming. We can tell that because how Philip articulates why Nathanael should come. He's like, "We have found him. We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law," which means that Nathanael in and of itself would have had an understanding of who this one is that they were looking for and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And so again, what we see, based on last week, if you haven't listened to it, make sure you go back and listen to it, we see Philip simply communicating a profound truth in a way that Nathanael would understand. He was a person of peace. He was open. He liked him. He listened to him. He showed hospitality to him. He was open to this news. And there is Philip saying, "Hey, here is the one." But what's fascinating is, of course, Nathanael's response. Nazareth, can anything good come from there? And what's really interesting, I think this is a little sidebar of encouragement when it comes to evangelism. What we see here in Nathanael is skepticism. I want to tell you, people, while you should not be scared of sharing truth, there will be times when you will share a truth and the response that you will get from people is skepticism. Okay? I'll tell you why. It's because God's truth, the way that we ought to live, doesn't always make sense when it comes to the logic of the world. I don't know if you've stumbled across that from time to time. The idea of generosity rather than self-preservation, if you push that far enough, it actually stops making sense, especially when you give more than you can afford to lose. Yeah? Even though we know that is true, that is profound, that actually shapes and transforms us and other people. There is a certain extent, even the idea of Jesus dying on the cross for forgiveness of sins, it's like, oh, that screams illogical, to some people. And so the idea of actually sharing some sort of truth, whether it be about Jesus or just a truth about kingdom living and his way, there are going to be times where you're going to come up against a skeptic, and I just want to say that's okay. That's okay. Anticipate that a little bit. It's just a great opportunity to wrestle with it a little bit more. Because people carry expectations, right? Nathanael had probably been waiting for this Messiah for some time, as far as we can understand. And so the idea that finally he's come, are you sure, Philip? Are you sure? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Now, why'd they hate Nazareth so much, you might ask? Well, Nazareth wasn't a big town, all right? It was just kind of, maybe a couple hundred people. Historians say maybe 500 max. Most people, historians would say less, maybe 200, 300 people. This wasn't a big town. And so really what was being said by Nathanael there is, could someone so profound, could something so true, so amazing come out of this seemingly insignificant place. So that's what Nathanael's saying. It's like, could something so big, so transforming, so world-changing come out of something so insignificant like Nazareth? Now hold on to that idea, because that idea of something profound coming out of something insignificant is the very thread that continues to emerge throughout this entire story. Let's continue. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Verse 48, "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then note Nathanael's response. Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Now, I remember reading this, all right, and I'm like, did I miss a couple of verses here, right? Because as far as I can tell, right, Nathanael's coming up. Jesus says, "Hey, there's an Israelite in whom there's no deceit. How do you know me? I saw you under the fig tree. You are the Messiah." It's like, what? Like, what? There feels like there's a disconnect between what Jesus said that he had seen and how Jesus knew him and the extent of Nathanael's response. Can I get some nods? Does anyone else agree that that's kind of strange? Yeah, okay. So I looked at this, I'm like, what happened for suddenly Nathanael to go from this skeptic, right, only several verses ago, to having this weird kind of exchange with Jesus where he's kind of throwing some stuff out there and Nathanael's like, "Hey, how do you know me?" To suddenly go, "You are the Messiah." I don't really see the Messiah stuff. We don't see like a miracle taking place here. Like what actually happened? And so we got Jesus declaring something over Nathanael before they even meet. And in whom he declares him as a man in whom there is no deceit. Now, it's really hard to know what's going on here. I want to be honest. But there's actually a lot of truth in what we don't know. You work that out in a second. Now, Nathanael doesn't actually object to what Jesus says about him. He actually says, "How do you know me?" Which means that these words of Jesus about an Israelite in whom there are no deceit obviously resonated with Nathanael for some reason. Okay? So he doesn't push back and say, no, I'm not worthy. In fact, a lot of the disciples, when they were approached by Jesus, that was their posture. "No, I am not worthy." But he's like, "How do you know me?" It's like, "Yeah, I know." How do you know me? How do you know that's me? And admittedly, on my first read, when I saw Jesus' response, "I saw you while you were under the fig tree," I just read that literally. I was like, well, maybe back, before they went off to Galilee, Jesus was hanging out with Peter and Mark and maybe Philip, and he's seeing this dude under a fig tree. He's just like, "Hey, there's a guy under a fig tree." And so then, suddenly we're going here, and Nathanael's like, "How do you know me?" He's like, "Hey, I saw you under the fig tree." I read it as if at face value, and yet as I kind of read it at face value, I went, this still doesn't make sense, because there's no reason for Nathanael to react the way that he did if he was just reading, if he was just acknowledging something that he'd seen. Clearly, there was more going on than the ability to see a person under a fig tree. If that was the thing that was going to lead people to Jesus, it's like, I'm going down the street. It's like, "Oh, you've got a great looking haircut. Yeah, how do you know me?" "Oh, I saw you standing by the bus stop." "Oh my goodness, Jesus is the Lord." It doesn't quite work that way. There must have been something else kind of going on here. Now, the fig tree. Right, let's talk a bit about context. The fig tree was an image of Jewish spirituality. It was a place known as a place of prayer and discernment. And so some people, scholars, kind of look at this idea of Nathanael sitting under the fig tree as this kind of allegory or image of Nathanael's dedication to the study of Torah. So maybe you could kind of take that angle. Jesus was aware that Nathanael was kind of studying the Torah. We don't know this for sure. But we see this kind of special knowledge that Jesus has about Nathanael. He knows that whatever was going on under that fig tree was something most likely to do with this idea that Nathanael was a man in whom there is no deceit. And therefore, he threw it out there. He threw it out there in a way that obviously resonated with Nathanael in a way that we can't understand. And this wasn't the only time that Jesus did this. A little bit later on, he demonstrates this kind of special knowledge with a Samaritan woman. He's at the well with a Samaritan woman, and she says, "I'm not married." He's like, I have no husband." "I know you have no husband. You've had so many husbands," right? So this isn't the only time that Jesus demonstrates a kind of special knowledge about people that is beyond what someone would generally know. But regardless of what took place, there was in this moment between Jesus and Nathanael, in this interaction, there was this common knowledge that was connected with the fig tree. Whatever Nathanael was doing under that fig tree, and whatever connection it had to this idea that Jesus was calling him out as a man in whom there was no deceit, there was this connection. And perhaps for us, it's not something that we can ever truly know or discover. But the moment that Jesus mentioned the spot under that fig tree, the moment Jesus mentioned that, the memories were to Nathanael so secret and so sacred that he had this awareness that the omniscient God was before him. Right? So we don't know what was going on in that fig tree. We don't know the significance of this interaction. All we can see is the result. And so Jesus says some words. He says some words that look so simple. You're under the fig tree, and yet something took place there where this rush of memories and whatever was going on under that fig tree for Nathanael overwhelmed him to the point where it was like, this guy is the Messiah, because only he would know what was going in my heart. The questions I was asking in that moment, what I was doing in that moment, and we don't know. We're left with this weird interaction, but we don't know. But something happened. And this is significant, right? When it comes to what it means for us to be evangelical in our practice. Because sometimes it isn't the most compelling argument or even the most significant thing that draws people to Jesus. Okay? Sometimes it is a simple thing, an answer that is given or an answer to a question that is asked in private, under a fig tree. You see, people walk around and we each carry our stories. We have our questions, we have our concerns, we have things that weigh on us, right? And there's a lot of things that we only know about in secret. Perhaps if you're a follower of Jesus, you share them with God. But for people all over this world, whether they have a relationship with God or not, we each carry stories, burdens, stuff that only we see, that no one else could possibly know. We couldn't know it. And yet, sometimes we could offer something so simple like, I saw you under the fig tree. And because that truth resonates with them in that kind of secret, powerful way, it does something transformative that we could have never seen coming. See, we don't know what God is already doing in people's hearts. We don't know what their fig tree moments are. We don't know the stuff that they're wrestling with. That's not for us to know. We have a responsibility to share the truth that has been placed before us, whether it be about Jesus, whether it be about some sort of kingdom impact. We put it out there and we just see how God uses it, right? Because while it may not seem significant to us or deep and transformative to us, it may just be the answer that this person has been craving, that they have been crying out for, right, for some time. And so we have this beautiful combination of interactions here where the skeptic is so quickly convinced. And remember Nazareth. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything significant come out of such a simple place? Well, this is exactly what happened. There was this simple interaction, and what did we get? This profound, overwhelming response. Jesus literally embodied the skepticism of Nazareth and said, yes, something good can come out of Nazareth. Even the simplest thing that I share can be so profound. And this isn't something that's just limited to Jesus. When it comes to his truth, the same can be true for us. You might be carrying truth or maybe encountering truth, I hope so, on a regular basis, and you might look at it and go, could anything significant really come out of this? And yet, to the right person at the right time for whom God is doing a work in their heart, it is not just significant, it is transformative in their lives. It's interesting, recently I've been thinking about this, and just to put some context around what this looks like for me. Recently we had some work done on our house, and we had some builders kind of coming around, and as we were having some conversations with, I suppose, the lead guy who was kind of coordinating the whole deal, I was just asking about how work was going, about culture, and about how he was feeling, And as we kind of had these few conversations over a couple of weeks, like, he disclosed that like his father had died. He had to travel down to Victoria. Like, this guy was a builder. Like, this was not like a pastoral meetup. This is a guy who was rocking up to our house and making sure that like the fire was being installed. But we were kind of having these interactions, and it got to the end, and I was going to settle the bill, and we'd been kind of texting, and I just kind of felt prompted. And I felt prompted. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do something that's kind of weird, but I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to kind of say, hey, thanks for all your work. Really appreciate your professionalism, all that kind of stuff. But before I sent that text, I kind of sat down and I like crafted this message, and it went something along the lines of, I know this is going to seem a bit weird, all right? But if you ever need someone to talk to, that's kind of what I do for a living. And so if there's ever if there's anything you want to share and you want confidentiality and you just want an external person to kind of like throw stuff off, just know I'm here. Which is like, I don't know if that was as weird, right? It felt weird to me, but I was like, I just kind of felt like I was going to do it. So anyway, I texted him with like the professional thing, and then I'm like, oh, by the way, here's some weird stuff. Take it or leave it, kind of thing. And you'd love if I ended and go, oh, it was amazing. And they said, yeah, I'd love to talk and I come to know Jesus. It hasn't happened yet, right? That's not the point, right? The point isn't that it was always going to be a fig tree moment. It could still be. I don't know. But the point is, I put something out there because I felt like there was a truth that was an opportunity. This guy was a bit of a person of peace, and I don't know what kind of work that God has been or will be doing in his heart, but nevertheless, I kind of put it out there in the hope that maybe at some point, maybe he'll text me right now, maybe he'll text me in a week, I don't know, to kind of go, you know what, your offer, right, which isn't about me, hopefully, okay, this is all about pointing to Jesus, by the way, keep that in mind, but your offer spoke to a need or something that I was thinking about and considering for some time. Yeah? And sometimes it's little things like this, little opportunities where you offer truth, offer generosity, offer something to somebody else. We don't know whether it's going to be a fig tree moment. We don't know. Sometimes the simplest things can be the most profound. I'm going to go on a little bit further. This is a little sidebar, but this is so cool. I couldn't help but share it. Notice this. Oh, here we go. This is basically the idea, by the way. A revealed truth may be God's answer to a hidden question. That's the big idea. A revealed truth that you share may be the answer, right? May be God's answer to a hidden question that people are asking. And so therefore, we should be bold in sharing truth, yeah? Because it's not all about us. It's about what God's doing under the fig tree for those people, yeah? And so a revealed truth may be God's answer to a hidden question, but if we don't reveal that truth, then it's not going to be an answer, is it? So we should put ourselves out there and use the opportunities we're presented with to offer something of God. Pushing on. Now, this is continuation. Jesus said, you believe, or it's otherwise phrased, do you believe in question form? Because I told you, I saw you under the fig tree. You will see greater things than these. Even Jesus acknowledges that this was kind of a relatively simple, pithy thing, right? You'll see even greater things than that. Then he added, very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. I'm just going to do a sidebar here because it speaks to exactly the same point. So he talks to Nathanael and says, hey, you thought that was cool? Hey, you're going to see awesome stuff in this. In fact, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see heaven open and angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Does anyone else know where there's a bit of angels ascending and descending? It's okay if you don't, but does that spring to mind for anywhere else in Scripture? Jacob, bingo, that's exactly right. So angels ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Let's jump over to Genesis because this is a direct reference or throwback to Genesis and Jacob. Genesis 28, 11 to 12, when Jacob, that is, reached a certain place, that is, a insignificant, certain, nothing of anyone's business kind of place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth. Note, Jesus says on the Son of Man for his one, but this one resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And then he wakes up a little bit later. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Okay, so this is actually a profound thing where Jacob's eyes are open to the fact that God was present in an insignificant place, right? It's like, well, surely this place, he calls it Beth El, which means the house of God, right? This certain place, this nothing place became a house of God, right? And so for Jacob, his eyes were open to the fact that God, right, was present and moving and working in power in even the most insignificant places. And this is all the way back in Genesis. And then we see here with Nathanael and Jesus Jesus is saying to Nathanael, hey, you will see heaven open. You'll see the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man, right, on me. So if you thought that the profound truth of God being all present in all places was significant for Jacob, well, actually, you're going to see this grander picture of God being fully present in me. That's what Jesus is saying here. You will not just see unexpected activity, God's activity in an unexpected place on earth, but you will see an unexpected person. That is what is at the core of this commissioning to Nathanael. So, there may be people in your world just waiting for a particular truth that will convince them that Jesus is Lord. I'm going to go out there on a limb and say there are people in your world who are waiting for perhaps even a simple truth that will convince them that Jesus is Lord. The question is, will we put ourselves out there and actually take the opportunity to extend truth in an accessible, sensible, perhaps simple way? And just like last week, I'm going to do a couple of applications that can help shape and help stop some of the blockages that get in the way of us becoming more evangelical. Number one, refuse to be an arbiter of significance. Now, that's some language there, I realize, but it just sounded so cool off the tongue that I couldn't help but put it up there. An arbiter is a judge, okay? An arbiter is a judge. Refuse to be a judge of significance. We do this all the time. We say that truth is profound and that truth is not so significant. And then if it exceeds a certain level that we subjectively place there, we think it's worth sharing, right? And if it doesn't actually exceed that level, if it's not exciting enough for us, if it's not profound enough for us, if it's not new enough for us, then we don't bother sharing it because it's just not that significant. We judge the significance of truth. One of the ways that we can get better at responding to the hidden questions that people are asking under the fig tree is to refuse to be an arbiter of significance. We don't get to decide the significance of God's truth, right, for a particular person. You never know how profound a truth may be. You never know that that image or that word or that offer is the answer to a question that somebody has been asking for a day, a week, a year for their life. We don't know. And so who are we to decide that that isn't significant enough to share? And so we need to get out of the habit, and I'd say this to myself as well, I'm not pretending like this isn't a challenge, by the way. We need to get out of the habit of judging whether or not something is true enough that it is worth sharing. If people need to know a truth that they are not alone, that there is hope, that there is offers of help out there, perhaps it's something about how you raise your kids that blew your mind, or that it wasn't blowing your mind but you thought it was helpful, you could just share it, right? Do what you can to give God the glory for it, right? But don't hold it back simply because you feel like it's not profound enough to share. Because you never know how profound a truth might be. I saw you under the fig tree. You are the Messiah. Make sense of that in your own world. Refuse to be an arbiter of significance. Number two, respectfully, and I put that very, very deliberately, right, because we're not going to fall into a bad habit here. Respectfully offer an answer without a question. Okay? Now, there are people who offer answers without questions who are really annoying, okay? I'm not talking about those people, right? The arrogant ones, etc. What I'm saying here is sometimes we can have the posture, and I know I do this as well, where we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're going, I'm just waiting for the open door. Waiting for that open door. I'm waiting for the person to ask me this very specific question. Oh, you're a Christian. You know who Jesus is. I'm really, really interested. Can you tell me more? And then we go, oh, wow, yes, I can. Rather than the little crack or perhaps the knock or perhaps the sharing of the truth without prompting. And I get why. Like sometimes we don't want to be lugged into perhaps a category of, those people who, are all about just converting people to Jesus, that kind of stuff, Usually people only put people in that category when they're arrogant, when they're not listening, when they're not respectful. But there's an opportunity to actually share truth respectfully without actually a question being prompted. This guy who I text, he didn't ask for support, I just kind of said, hey, if you want it, I just want to let you know I'm here. I don't know what it is for you. Something you can offer, a truth, something that sprang out of the scriptures that you're just like, hey, I should share this rapidly because, that's what Mark did with Peter, and I want to share this simply because that's what Mark did with Peter and Nathaniel, and Philip did with Nathaniel, and you know what? I've decided that even though it's not really huge for me, I'm not going to be an arbiter of its significance. Maybe it's true. And so therefore I'm going to find a person of peace and I'm going to go to share this, even though this person hasn't been asking the question. Can you see how all these things kind of link, right? And so you have this posture change where evangelism isn't, again, about being on some sort of pedestal, capital E, I've got it all together, but rather it becomes this practice like breathing where we're actually excited about the truth of God that can transform our lives each and every day, and we're just sharing it like it's breathing. And for some people, they'll pick it and take it and run with it. For some people, it'll be their fig tree stuff that they've been looking for. For other people, it won't. Maybe they'll be a little bit cynical, like Nathaniel. Maybe they'll just brush it off. That's all right. The world can do with more truth, even if it's just in random circulation. Okay? So what does it look like to be reminded tonight that just like Jesus and Nathaniel, God already knows the people in your world. He already knows them. He's already doing work. And yet he invites us to play a part in helping lead them to him by answering some of the questions that are perhaps being asked in secret. And so to wrap up tonight, we're going to do the same thing that we did last week. We're going to spend 5 minutes in little small groups, just with the people who are around you. Please keep it COVID safe and all that jazz, but just with 5 minutes, okay? That's all. 5 minutes with the people around you. Let's take an opportunity to kind of land these ideas from tonight. And these are the 2 questions that I'd like you to discuss in that 5 minutes. Number 1, have you ever received or experienced a truth that was mysteriously more profound and significant than would be expected? Like, have you personally actually had one of those moments where you're like, well, that resonated with me, or like that was an answer to one of my questions that I've been asking? Perhaps it was more than the sum of its parts or was uniquely impactful to you in a way that others couldn't understand. It's like, what's with, the spoon? Okay, just a little side story. Sometimes at youth we do these prophetic nights where we have a series of objects or words that people can write down and kind of hand to each other. Sometimes it's called Christ Candle. We do this kind of act and we ask God to speak through what's there and we kind of pass it on to people. And it's amazing actually at the end of a night where we reflect and some of these youth share their stories. They're going, wow, you picked up the sharpener, whatever it was, the sharpener, and you gave it to me and you spoke a word with that image or with that object that actually really spoke into my circumstances in a way that for everyone else, like, it's a sharpener, dude. Okay? So sometimes things, because God has been doing the work, can speak more profoundly. And lastly, what is one barrier you need to overcome to personally become more proactive in offering truth? Yeah? 2 questions, challenging questions. Okay, all right. We're in the business of training people up. We want to see people mobilized. Remember, the goal is disciples who make disciples, right? That is the goal. So that's why we're asking these questions. So let's spend 5 minutes and only 5 minutes in some small groups, okay? And then we'll bring it back together and we'll finish with a song. So let me pray and then we'll get into groups. Jesus, thank you that you are the God who is continually at work. And so God, would you move in us and may the truth that we share move in others. God, would you surprise us with the profound significance that even small truths can have on others? Lord, I particularly think of work colleagues. I think of fellow parents who don't know you, students, perhaps, that we work with. God, these people who come to mind right now. I think about these people who are asking questions and they don't know you, they don't know your truth, and yet we are positioned to share something of your way with them. And Lord, we want to pray that that would be an answer to the question that they're asking, and may you receive the glory for that. Give us boldness as we seek to become more evangelical in our everyday practice. May sharing truth become something that isn't an effort, but rather it's simply a part of who we are, because we're actually excited by the transformative work of your truth in our lives and in the work of this world. And so, God, challenge us, we pray. Open our eyes to the opportunities that you are presenting us with to continue the work that you're doing in people's hearts. In your name, amen. Okay, 5 minutes. Just cluster in little groups and see if you can have a little bit of a chat about this. Don't spend too much time with formalities and that kind of stuff. Hey, just dig straight into these questions and see what God says.